Hello, welcome to Move Younger. I'm Kathy Hale. Move Younger is about the three elements of aging well: how we move, what we eat, and how we deal with stress. Today, my guest is Dr. James Smith. Dr. James Smith is a double board certified internist and vascular medicine specialist. Dr. Smith has a predominant interest in cardiovascular disease and the prevention of it. He also participates in ongoing studies in other areas of medicine and disease as well, and he understands the physical as well as mental well being needed. This has become a centerpiece in his practice and teaching, and in over 35 years of practice, he has met and helped and managed thousands of individuals. Today, we are discussing stress and cardiovascular disease, what foods to eat for heart healthy diet, what activities are best for cardiovascular lifestyle, I should say healthy cardiovascular lifestyle, and what are the warning signs of cardiovascular risk and how these can be mitigated. Welcome to Move Younger. I'm so happy to have you as a guest.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So I was going to start with maybe just a few statistics, even though we all know them, then we can address them. So this is from the Center for Disease Control. Heart disease is the leading cause of death for men and women. Coronary heart disease is the most common heart disease, and in the US, someone has a heart attack every 40 seconds. So what do you first respond to that?
Yeah, this is another day at the office. We see patients all the time who are having heart disease or cardiovascular disease, strokes, etc. It all begins with lifestyle, basically. The problem is that the Western diet contributes a lot, and our food chain sources are really kind of skewed toward development of cardiovascular disease.
When you say that, can you give specific examples of what kind of foods would be helpful? And actually, first, how is it skewed? And then what foods would be helpful?
Sure. So there are a number of epidemiologic studies that show people who are from countries at low risk for cardiovascular disease, for instance, Far Eastern countries, once they move to this country, after 5 or 10 years, they start to become sort of habituated to our lifestyle and diet, especially. And all of a sudden, those people who were previously at low risk now are developing manifestations of cardiovascular disease. They talk a lot about hunters and gatherers lifestyle. Our ancient ancestors lived lifestyles that they didn't have TV changers and things that would distract them. I mean, they basically hunted to stay alive and provide food for their family, and they were busy all day long, constantly moving, and they did not have a lot of the downside of processed foods that we have today.
In particular, with processed foods, what are the main issues with them? Can you address that or?
Well, there are a number of issues. Processed foods really is anything that's prepared with preservatives. And you'll see meat at the grocery store that is pink, but it's starting to turn colors, and the next day it's pink again because they add something to make it pink again. So there are a number of issues with chemicals, especially hormones given to beef and our food sources to improve efficiency and shorten growth periods so that they can get the animals to market faster.
And have the food last longer and not spoil, or make it appear not to spoil by adding something to make it pink again, I assume. And so you also talked about movement and daily movement, which I agree. I mean, as a kid, I walked to school, and I just don't think that is very common any longer. I grew up in the city. It was, sort of just what everybody did. You meet your friends and you just start picking up people as you walked along the way. And now everybody's carpooled to and from school and to all activities, it seems like. So that's just with kids, but that creates a problem in an ongoing way, I'd say. Is
Sure, it
that what?
can. Yeah, I mean, currently, you didn't have iPads and iPhones back then, and you used to stay out until it was dark, and your mother and dad didn't worry about you, but you'd play until it was time to come in because there were only two choices on TV, so it was more fun to be outside. Now we're distracted by a lot of things that result in sedentary behavior. In older patients, we refer to it as sitting disease. And patients admit sitting disease, yeah, he's getting it. And the wife will point to her husband or vice versa. And it's something that all of us need to overcome.
What would you say is the best advice you could give in general, just in general, to start getting active again, to schedule a daily walk or to do a little weightlifting or whatever?
So,
What
what
would
you're alluding to is prevention of a sedentary lifestyle. So, any movement at all, American Heart Association recommends 45 minutes at least of vigorous exercise at least 3 times a week. That could be a walk, it could be any number of things. One of the things that I see is as people lose mobility, they start to lose other things, like they develop other problems with neuropathy. It hurts to walk. It hurts to get up and move. So mobility is key to maintaining a healthy lifestyle and being able to walk and be more active. One test that's kind of interesting and actually is a predictor of cardiovascular morbidity or illness associated with heart and vascular disease is your ability to touch your toes. So if you're 50 years old, you ought to be able to touch your toes. And if you can't, it's something you need to work on. It's even worse when people get to their sixth and seventh and eighth decade. They lose mobility. Therefore, it just feels best to sit around and not move.
I would, from a Pilates perspective, I think about, we're as young as our spine. So that's when you say touch your toes. That makes sense to me. But to think of it as preventing heart disease or an indication of a prevention, I guess, or an indication that if you can't touch your toes, you're maybe at risk. Is that right? Or am I reading that wrong?
Well, I'm basically
Or it can
alluding
be
to
an,
it can
go ahead.
contribute because you lose mobility. So as you get
Okay.
stiffer and you can't touch your toes, which again, a lot of it begins in the spine, the lower back. But as you
Right.
lose mobility, you lose the advantage of exercise. We were always told when we were young, it's good to get exercise. Well, why? Well, it just seems like a good idea, which of course it was. Now there's a hormone that's been identified as it's called BDNF. It's brain derived neurotrophic factor. This is a hormone that is manufactured in skeletal muscles. These are the long muscles, your biceps and forearms, your quadriceps, your calf muscles, your glutes. So by exercising those muscles, this hormone brain derived neurotrophic factor is produced, recirculated, and it's been called miracle grow for the brain. So that's why exercise is good. That's one reason why exercise is good.
So I'm just so fascinated right now. So the exercise builds bone strength or builds bone mass more correctly, and that bone mass also feeds the brain. Is that correct? Did I follow that correctly?
It's the metabolism of skeletal muscle, the exercising of skeletal muscles that produces this hormone that basically stimulates the brain. So long bones are definitely involved. It has to do with range of motion. And if you don't use those muscles, as you know, as a Pilates instructor, they atrophy, they shrink. So if you don't lose them, they can't produce this hormone, and it sort of cascades into this cycle of immobility, lack of motivation, increased weight gain, sedentary behavior, and so forth.
Yes, yes. Oh, I this is really fascinating, I will stay on track when I get into some of these things. It's so fascinating because I occasionally get called in to sub for classes at their centers for people 50 and older. So they can be all ranges of mobility. And some of them, they're all, it's surprising. There's some that are, up and down and really fit, and others can't stand really, or they can't stand to do exercise. And no matter the mobility, I always tell them the keys to staying fit physically and what matters as you age is balance. And so when you talked about the feet and not, sitting, because if you can't balance and maintain your balance, what happens is you fall, and then you break a hip or you hurt something. And of course, the spine, because if your back is stiff, you don't move and your hips get stiff and everything kind of follows on that. And then cardiovascular, yes, of course, and all those things too, of course, do all those things. But it's just like I try to get them to understand these really basic things. Like you want to be able to balance, you want to be able to have a movement throughout all your joints, your shoulders, your back, your hips, your feet, and your head, because our body starts to start crumbling into a postural position that also doesn't make it easy to stay fit. So that was just fascinating to me.
So I had this.
Go ahead.
No, I had this patient who was. He's actually a retired doctor, and he had a horrible back. He was a radiologist, and he couldn't stand up straight, and he had a horrible time with pain and so forth. He was taking opioids, and they helped a little, but he was never really happy because he was always in pain. And the surgeons had told him there's nothing to do for your back, steroid injection won't help, and so forth. And he said to me, "Is there anything I can do?" And I said, Pilates. I said, because core strengthening basically
Yes.
is opposite your lumbar spine.
Yes.
And core strengthening, I think, will make things better. Well, this doctor got absolutely addicted to Pilates, and he was going to class 3 times a week, taking Pilates individually twice a week, and his whole attitude changed. His mobility increased, his pain decreased, and he actually set the record for planks. He was the longest planker for an 85-year-old. He went 7 minutes.
Wow. So that I could do it for 7 minutes.
I
That's
could,
amazing.
yeah. But anyway, it's about core strengthening, and I'm a full fan of Pilates. The other thing that's good for balance is Tai Chi. My mother-in-law at age 75 started doing Tai Chi, and we thought, geez, that's great. I didn't know what Tai Chi was. I thought, she's going to get in a street fight or something. Well, to the contrary, it's all about balance and symmetry and movement. And it's like you alluded to, the fact your first fall can be very devastating. Your first fall, when you have neuropathy in your feet and legs, you have difficulty feeling them, is not usually going to be your last fall. And a fracture is life changing. So that's why it's important to think about these things when you're 50 and when you're 60 and when you're 70. And even when you're 80, it's not too late.
And younger.
And
And
young.
younger, I think, because if you don't start those patterns of regular exercise and being aware of your diet, that's when you suddenly wake up one day and it's like, oh, how did I get to this place where I can't move, where I can't stand, where everything hurts, where I gained weight? It doesn't happen overnight, in my opinion. I think it's really important to start young and in a way that you start developing it as a lifestyle that you will always maintain, and find out what appeals to you to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Like some people like to walk, some people like to run, that kind of thing.
Couldn't
Just
agree.
also, Tai Chi was studied by Joseph Pilates, so it makes sense. The martial arts, I should say, the martial arts is where some of his ideas came from. So makes sense. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, just that we're getting back to mobility, and loss of mobility starts sometimes a sort of a bad cascade of events. If you fall
Mm-hmm.
and break your hip, you really need to try and regain that mobility because we all know what happens if you don't.
Yes.
So you're talking about preventative maintenance here, and that can begin when you're 30. If you see changes in your lifestyle and changes in the way you feel, and you know that you have a history of cardiovascular disease, it's not hard to figure out the solution to avoid that. I mean, sure, there are medications and so forth. We sort of would rather take a pill than exercise. Unfortunately, that doesn't work out.
Yes, we like quick solutions for sure. You know, let me just find an easy out. I will say, as someone who's also had some injuries, the body can heal. You just have to be patient. You just have to put in the effort, whatever it is, whether it's working with a specialist like a Pilates instructor or having body work done. But a pill is kind of a band-aid when it comes to movement.
No question. And it's easy to take more pills, but it doesn't
Really.
get you anywhere. Basically, there are two ways to think about that. I was thinking more about KNOW pain, no pain, KNOW gain.
Oh, oh, that's better. So, given that, uh, can you break it down to what people should look at in different decades of their life just to stay aware so they don't wake up one day and have the oh my gosh moment? And I do know that women, I think, are higher. I don't know if I have that statistic. Uh, are often have at higher risk of heart attacks, or maybe not higher risk, but are more likely to have a heart condition or heart attack without recognizing the symptoms. So I know I kind of threw two things in there, but if we could look at what actions people could take to maintain a healthy life throughout, and the difference between women and men.
Sure. I mean, what you said is true. The other thing about women is women who have heart attacks don't do as well as men who have heart attacks. Even women who have stents and surgery don't do as well as men. But what you went back to, what you alluded to, that women's symptoms are not typical. They're always a little different than men. If you are at risk for heart disease, if your mother had a heart attack in her 50s and her sister had a heart attack young, you need to really start profiling your blood cholesterol, those sorts of things early, around 30 years of age, to see if you have that tendency. And then if you do have that tendency, either you could be treated with medications. There's good medications for cholesterol, but by all means, try to eliminate the other risk factors that put you at increased risk. Smoking is by far the greatest culprit of all. That is the most detrimental to your cardiovascular health of anything else.
And as far as 45 minutes, 3 times a week of some kind of movement that gets your heart rate up. Like
Right.
what it would have been in the old aerobic movement, just hitting a certain aerobic heart rate.
Sure. But not when you're 80. I mean, you're not going to get
Not
45
when you're
minutes.
80, but like young
Uh,
growing up.
so it's basically depending on where you started. So I mean, someone
Mm-hmm.
who's been sedentary since they were 60 or before that, you're not going to get 45 minutes out of them. But basically, they need to commit. They need to commit because they're on a path that everyone can predict where they're headed if they stay the course where they are now. On the other hand, if you step in and do some things differently, uh, your lifestyle can improve and your risk for cardiovascular disease and stroke will lessen. One of the things that people have said to me for many years is that, we talk about heart and high blood pressure and cholesterol and all that. They say, well, if I have a heart attack, that's one thing, but God forbid, I don't want to have a stroke. Whatever happens, don't let me have a stroke. So, I mean, that's one end of the spectrum. And some of these patients who don't even know they have heart disease will present to the emergency room with a stroke.
Because the same factors lead to stroke.
Because the same factors lead to stroke, and because their risk factors have not been adequately addressed. Nobody likes
Okay.
taking pills, but hypertension is a huge risk factor as well as smoking for heart and vascular disease. So you need to make sure that your blood pressure is well controlled. I'll see a patient in the office and their blood pressure will be 168 on top, and I'll say to them, what does your pressure usually run? And they always say the same thing. Oh, I'd say 120 or 130 on top. I tell them, well, that's great. I mean, that's our target. We'd like 120 or 130, but it's 160 today in the office. I realize that, white coat and all that. But what happens if you're in a traffic jam? What happens if you're late for an appointment and you're stressed out driving? What's your blood pressure then? Well, it's probably 160 again because stressful situations will exacerbate elevated blood pressure. So we get in this debate. Do I need medicine? Do I not need medicine? So one tool that a vascular specialist or cardiologist will emphasize is an echocardiogram, which is an ultrasound of the heart. And that allows us to look at the heart, the chambers, see if there's any enlargement. If the heart is enlarged, that almost always points to high blood pressure that has not been adequately treated. There are other causes, but the predominant cause is hypertension that's not well controlled.
If someone is already at the 60 or older, would you give them, I know medication, but would you give them uh, just start moving daily, kind of, since the 45 minutes might be hard, or I'm just trying to break it down to something that I think often when someone has a condition, it can feel overwhelming to focus on how to handle it. And so I always try to break it down into little bite-sized things for them to do.
Of course, it makes sense. So, it's like you're saying, if someone is not active, and you tell them you need to do 45 minutes 3 times a week, it's not going to happen. And when they get home, the spouse is going to say, "What did he say?" "Well, he told me to exercise more and lose weight." What a waste of time that was. No, I don't just tell you. I have to motivate you. And the way I motivate you is to determine your amount of exercise now that you get, which maybe is very little, and prescribe something that you can accomplish. So make it a goal that they can achieve. I'd like for you to get out and just walk around the block once, 3 times a week. That's a start. And then when you see them again, you praise them for accomplishing that. And those people who are motivated enough to do that, a walk around the block 3 times a week, usually those people will come back and say, I started doing 2 laps around the block because it makes me feel better. But it's a commitment, and it's a commitment with a major change in your outlook and your approach to your own lifestyle.
When I had Pilates clients who were wanting to make changes, and there was a lot of different things. It was part diet, like lose weight, and also, of course, they were doing Pilates, but some of them were pretty square one, I'll say. And I had one client who really wanted to lose weight, but had been at a desk job as a secretary forever, and now she was in her 60s. And so I asked her to just start walking, and I said, just do once around, and then try to add a little bit more every day. And it was hard for her to. She just wanted to make it slow, and I said, well, the goal is you want to walk at a pace that makes you have a little bit of shortness of breath talking, or not, I shouldn't say shortness of breath, but you're not just strolling along.
Right. You're not window
Well, she did.
shopping.
Yeah. And so she did finally get to that point. I don't know. I don't see her anymore, whether she stayed there or not. And the other thing with her diet was I said, you have to stop drinking soft drinks. You just have to. Your goal is to lose weight. That is sugar. You have to replace it. And she's like, but what with what? I thought, it really is that confusing. So yeah, so I gave her a list of things, and
You
and
know,
I just do it for a month. Do 1 month and see where you are. Just baby steps every day for a month. Build those baby steps every single day, so that maybe it's 5 the first day and 6 the second, and 7. Just keep building.
mhm.
Go on.
It's always better to do it before a bad event too, rather than after. It's better to do
Yes.
it before you have a heart attack or before you have a stroke, because afterwards it's going to be a even bigger struggle. The weight loss thing is a really difficult thing. It's complex. I've always thought that our diet, the American diet, was biased by the pharmaceutical industry and the FDA, the food industry that adds something to your Cheetos that makes you get a dopamine reward and want more, but there's something else in there that makes you not feel full, so you can eat half the bag before you know it. So I think that you really need to pay attention to what you're eating. Think of food as fuel. I've often said that, geez, I mean, if you buy a new car, you're not going to buy jumpstart gasoline because it's cheap. You're going to get quick trip. They guarantee it. So burn good fuel, and food is your fuel. So if you want to live on soda, like you said, that's a lot of sugar. That's burning bad fuel.
Yep. And sugar burns quickly. Yeah. I'll just address this from my perspective of having worked in the food industry and have just a lot of studies with farming and different things like that. The processed foods, the problem is they create cravings for salt and sugar. And you could say fat, but it's really the sugar that creates the fat craving. Most people wouldn't just eat butter. It's the sugar added to butter
Right.
that
Right.
makes it happen, makes us want it. But they elevate their flavor so that the salt is what you crave, the sweet is what you crave. And so another thing I did with clients was I would restrict things for like 1 week, where I'd say you can't have this, trust me. And then we go into just adding things. But one of the things I did was I said, you need to develop your palate so you start tasting food again. And I learned that young because my mother had high blood pressure and she had to go on a low sodium diet. So I got used to tasting things without a lot of salt. And it was pretty fascinating, because I've always cooked so the salt elevates the flavor rather than overwhelms the flavor. The salt enhances everything. And it's like you can always salt a little bit more, but you can't take it out. So it's just teaching them to have a more of awareness of what is causing them to crave these things. Processed foods, it's marketing science.
You know, one
It's to
one
it's to
hot
make good money.
one hot topic now in cardiovascular health is fiber. It turns out that
Hmm.
the majority of us don't get enough fiber in our diet. So focusing more on plant sources of protein and learning about how to add fiber to your diet can improve a lot of things, including weight and including your risk for other things like cancer. Fatty deposition, people who are overweight. First of all, I was always a little taken back by people who fat shamed people. And I always said, I don't know of one person I've met in my life who said, I want to be chubby. I want to be fat. I want to be, no, nobody wants that. It's just that they've fallen into this trap of sometimes instant gratification, fast food, etc., not sitting down and making food an experience, not eating with your family anymore. When you were a kid and I was a kid, or I was before you, but a family meal used to be an event, and the TV was off, and you didn't have distractions at the table, and it was sort of an end of day summary before you did your homework. But now it's not like that, and it's taking a toll on risk for cardiovascular disease and other problems.
Hmm. Shoot, I had a thought with some of the stuff you were saying. Now I've lost it. Sorry. It'll come back to me. It was about fiber. Fiber. Um, I feel like fiber has been eliminated from our diet because, first of all, we had the whole gluten free thing, and it's so much healthier to eat um, well made bread with real well milled flour and whole grains like rice. Just carbs in general became also a bad food. And then fruit became seen as sugar rather than this is full of vitamins and fiber and all kinds of antioxidants often. And so that this is all marketing, in my opinion, too, where different diets become the marketed way of getting healthy. And so fiber, I should say carbohydrates and fruit in general became the bad guys. I actually had people say to me about like an apple, like, well, you should really have something like a big piece of bacon instead. And I said, you're telling me you think you should eat a piece of bacon? This was the Atkins time over this. Like, I mean, I like bacon, but I'm not going to choose to eat bacon like I eat apples. you know, I can easily eat an apple a day. That's like very easy,
Right.
but
So
I'm
if you
not going
look
to
at
eat bacon every day.
if you look at the nutrient content of an apple or fresh fruit, like you've said, there are many advantages. One of which is fiber. So fresh fruit is a good source of fiber, vitamin C, other nutrients. So the simple carbohydrates, white rice, mashed potatoes, uh, basically things that are white in your diet are simple carbohydrates that are converted to sugar once they're digested. And those are the things that we try to minimize: more whole grains, more fiber. And if you need to look up what foods are high in fiber, pick the ones you like and have those as snacks or have those available more often.
And another thing, I think, if people can also get in touch with how their body is responding to food, but you have to start cleaning it up first, so that if it's hard to make these changes, just start paying attention to how you feel after you eat. Because generally speaking, you feel sluggish when you've had too much of something that's not good for you, whereas you feel energized with food that actually feeds your body. Another
You know,
little simple sort of
I've
temperature
found,
taking.
yeah, I know I've found that personally. I found that I used to be a steak and potato guy growing up, but now I eat less meat just because it's not something I crave anymore. I can have
Hmm.
half a portion. When I used to eat a whole steak, I'm pretty satisfied with half a portion, but it's about sort of retraining your dietary habits, especially if you need a wake up call. If you need a wake up call because you had a light heart attack or something, a lot of patients with diabetes will have a silent heart attack. They'll say, "Oh yes, I've had diabetes for 5 years or 10 years," and you get an EKG and there's evidence of a heart attack, and you say, "Well, I don't ever recall having a heart attack." 1 out of 5 people with diabetes have actually had a heart attack and don't know
With type 2 diabetes or both
it.
types of
With
diabetes?
with type 2 diabetes,
With type 2, okay, that's what I
yeah,
thought, yeah.
early diabetes is a very high predictor for cardiovascular disease, and with insulin pumps and better education now, type 1 diabetics are living a lot longer.
Hmm.
But it's the type 2s that are predominant in the over 60 age category, because type 2 diabetes is brought on by storing excess weight, excess fat in your body. Your liver stores fat, uh, and waist circumference reflects fat storage. And these are things, fat causes inflammation, systemic inflammation in your body. And inflammation is a key element of forming cardiovascular plaques, hardening of the arteries.
I was going to go on to some other statistics. So 1 in 5 heart attacks, the damage in one, I'm sorry, in 1 in 5 heart attacks, the damage is done, but the person is unaware of it. So basically, 1 in 5, they've already had heart damage done, but they didn't have any clue. Which you talked about. Risk factors are high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and smoking, which you talked about. Lifestyle choices and medical conditions that put you at risk are diabetes, overweight, or obesity, unhealthy diet, physically inactive, and excessive use of alcohol, which you talked about everything but the alcohol. Does alcohol have, like, what is, address alcohol?
So, up until a couple of years ago, the American Heart Association did retrospective analysis on patients who consumed alcohol. And what they found was that the risk for alcohol consumption for patients developing cardiovascular disease increases after 2 or more drinks a day in males and after 1 drink a day in females. So that kind of had me scratching my head. Why would that be? Well, it turns out that any alcohol is converted to sugar and it contributes to tendencies toward diabetes. It's very calorie dense, so that you have to think twice about alcohol. Probably your body's just better without it. Now, do I enjoy a good glass of wine or a coffee? Yes, I do, but a lot more than I used to, a lot less than I
Yes,
used to.
I also enjoy a good glass of wine.
Uh-huh. And so people say, well, the red wine is good for you because of the skin in red wine, similar to grapes, has antioxidant effects and some phytochemicals that are beneficial. It's true. It just depends on how you want to skew it. So is two
Yeah.
glasses better than one? Is three better than two?
Or
Probably
is it
not.
better to eat grapes?
Or is it better
Or
grapes
maybe
and
just eat the
blueberries?
grapes themselves. um, so we might have addressed this. I do want to talk about stress. When it comes to lifestyle choices, what do you think people are basically doing right and what are they just completely getting wrong? Is there something I know, my experience working with clients, sometimes I'm just like, oh my gosh, no, like especially with diets, like they get that wrong a lot.
So personally, I think one thing they're doing wrong is screen time. I think screens
Mm.
take a lot of unnecessary time and distract us from what's really should be going on in our lives. And we all do it because of cell phones and iPads and computers and 250 TV channels. But screen time is an additional, very strong risk factor for development of these problems. So you need to decrease your
Because of
screen time
immobility,
because of
because of
immobility. Well,
okay,
also if you can't sleep at night and you get up and read stories on your iPad, there's something about that light that interrupts the cycle, the cortisol cycle, and it makes your sleep less effective. So you may never get to stage 4 sleep. So you may never feel completely rested. So I think that it's pretty clear that screen time is a big contributor to stress because you're tired a lot. And I think it's something that you need to take a hard look at.
I have said, you can see my Apple Watch, that this is the one device I have that encourages me to move, that gives me feedback on how I'm maintaining things. I can actually check my sleep because it connects to my phone. So I can see how I'm sleeping at night, which I find really fascinating.
Right.
I didn't get it for that. I wanted it. I wanted it for a while. But anyway, I wanted to be able to track my activity because I had a business that kept me less active than I liked. It was a lot of standing, but it was definitely added stress and physical stress, mental stress, emotional stress, all those things. So I wanted to get it to help me track those things. But yeah, this one encourages you because it'll say, "Hey, stand up. Hey, do this."
That's good.
And it'll say, "Hey, you haven't completed your circles." No, it doesn't talk, but you get an alert.
Mhm.
There's still time. So for me, if I need a little nudge,
Sure.
I just kind of
What,
like it.
whatever it
Um,
takes. Whatever it takes to get you moving.
I think, yeah, especially when you have a really thinking of stress, a job that has you in front of the computer all day or has you sitting all day and you're working hard all day, but you're working in a very sort of boxed in way. You're not walking through the fields attending to, livestock or walking like a mailman would. You're just sitting and focused. And I think that kind of mental stress without physical activity seems to accelerate, or maybe not accelerate, but perhaps make stress even more harmful. Or am I just
No, I
feeling that
think
and there's no facts?
no, I think you're right. People say, "Can stress kill you?" Well, stress in and of itself probably is not going to kill you, but stress in conjunction with underlying cardiovascular disease elevates your blood pressure. It gets you on this vicious cycle of worsening health issues related to cardiovascular disease. So, yeah, and it's like you said, when you're sitting, you're not only not moving, you're not taking deep breaths, you're not standing up straight, and basically you need to schedule interruptions from your work because, as you know, sitting at a computer all day can be very stressful.
It can be headachy. That's how I think of it. It can just feel
Hmm.
like, I need it. I'm. I don't know if you can tell watching me. I'm kind of a wiggle worm all the time. I always have been. I'm just a little. I have a lot of energy in my body, and when I'm working at a computer, I often stand. I before standing desk, I would stand because I get restless sitting, and yeah, it's. But I get kind of headachy if I'm just there too much. What are there things you advise patients as far as handling stress?
Just, I've tried meditation myself. I've tried meditation with YouTube instructions and so forth. I'm not very good at it. But I would say interrupting stress with exercise, even if it's just getting out in the fresh air and walking to the corner and back. Appreciate the world around you and step out of those situations that are so stressful. Just remove yourself for 30 minutes or for however long it takes and start smelling the roses beyond work. There's a lot out there, and just getting fresh air is good enough. If you want to jog, that's fine. If you want to ride a bicycle, that's fine. But just changing your point of view, removing yourself from those situations and getting in healthier situations. Think about your breathing, think about your muscle movement, and so forth.
Hmm. That's really true. There is a lot about how you don't have to meditate, but you can listen to music and that can calm your mind. It actually has an effect on your body. And definitely getting out in nature can calm your mind. I I think if somebody has an active mind, then put on music and go for a walk, and then you can have a little way of soothing your mind and stopping the endless chatter, which is basically what all meditation is about. But there's that guy on Instagram, and I can't think of his name, but he has ongoing little tricks to calm the body. So he has things that are helpful besides meditation, and that's all I can think of right now that you talked about was music and walking outside. It's like you said at the very beginning, we grew up in a time where we were outside all day. We didn't come in until the street lights came on. Then we had to come in. And then if the fireflies are out, we were catching those, but in our yard. Um, but how our lifestyle is doing a lot of things to age us more rapidly, because we are not walking, we are not moving, we're not eating, we're not actually getting the healthy germs that we got from being outside too. And there's all kinds of interesting factors in there too. So um, walking does more than calm the mind. We're getting some germs in there too that are
Mm.
helpful.
So I have a patient who's 89 years old, and about 12 years ago, he had a major stroke, a major big time stroke from atrial fibrillation, a heart condition. And he lost his ability to speak and he lost movement on his entire right side. He went to rehab, which most people after a stroke do, and he did pretty good. But it's hard to live in a world after you lose half of your motor functions on one side of your body. Well, this guy got committed to riding his bicycle. I see him twice a year now. He's up to 9,000 miles on his bicycle. In his apartment, he rides the bicycle. It's a stationary bike. He rides it
Stationary,
every
that's what I
single
thought. Yeah.
day, and he's very determined to continue riding it. And it's why he wasn't one of many people who frequently die within a year of a major stroke like that. But if he had started riding his bicycle sooner, he may not have had this problem in the first place.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's a
Which
he's a
makes
good he's a good example of someone who's determined to try and make life better after a catastrophic event, and he's proved it can work. He's an inspirational guy.
that's really really fascinating. I always feel like the body's so resilient, and the examples you've given just prove that. I mean, the back and the patient who did Pilates and had his back his movement restored, and then I love that about the stroke patient, because I have seen people also who had strokes, and I thought it's just their determination to not have this be the not this be moment change everything in their life. It's like they had the determination to turn things around. So that just shows that if we just start taking these steps, we can change our trajectory, no matter where, no matter really our age. You said he was how old? Who had the stroke?
He was
80?
90. Yeah, he's 89 years old.
89, so nearly 90. Yeah. That's that should encourage everyone
Yeah, I
to,
love seeing the
to
guy.
take action.
I love it when he comes in because I always ask him, "What are you up to now on your odometer?" And he always tells me that, I mean, he's 9,000 miles. That's a lot of miles.
That's a lot of miles. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Let me see if there's anything else do you have anything else you want to add
Oh, just at
that I
taking
forgot?
ownership, just at taking ownership. Maybe you haven't been diagnosed with cardiovascular disease. Maybe you haven't been told you have hypertension or borderline diabetes, but take ownership of what you have. One of my professors used to tell me, he said, Jim, this is not dress rehearsal. This is your life. You got one
Yeah,
chance. It's not
yeah,
dress rehearsal. You don't get two chances, or maybe you do, but if you need the second chance, sometimes you're coming from around the behind the eight ball because now you have something that you really find difficult to overcome. So just take ownership of whatever the problem is. If it's a weight problem or if it's a blood pressure problem, you have to own it, and no one can do it for you. You have to make up your mind that look, I'm on a path that someone has told me is not good, or maybe I realize is not good, and only I can change it. It's easier said than done, but again, it's not dress rehearsal.
right. And baby steps add up.
Exactly.
You know, it's those little things make a big difference. There, I think we also used to say, change your diet by just every day eating just 1% cleaner. Just if it feels overwhelming to eliminate all the fast foods or this and that, it's just take it a step at a time. Today you'll skip that burrito that you got from some fast food joint that you always get at lunch and just say instead I'll have fruit.
Right. Keep healthy choices in the house.
Yeah.
Okay, do I want some
Yes.
potato chips or can I have half an apple?
Yes. Yes.
I want the
it's
potato chips, but I know the
it's an
apple's
easy
better.
choice after you start changing. Yeah. It's just like you can start pedaling away those miles when you just get on the bike and start hitting it just a little bit. And then next thing you know, you're going further and you're going further, even if it is on stationary. Um, I was I will put your website. So if people would like to ask you questions, um,
KansasVascularMedicine.com.
get in touch with you there. And you have a blog on your website, I believe.
Yes,
And I can't remember.
it's in its early stages, but yes, if you have questions, don't hesitate.
Okay. Okay. Are you on any social media? Probably not. If they wanted to contact you that way.
Probably not.
Okay. I
The
was just
best way is the
guessing.
website. The best way is the website.
Okay. So for a final question, what advice would you give your younger self?
You are what you eat.
That's good.
That was
That
not
is very true.
premeditated. It was not premeditated. I came up with that. So if you want to be a banana split and soda, you can do that. But no, I think you need to think of food as fuel, and you need to burn good fuel. And if you have type 1 diabetes, you have to be more vigilant because that really puts you at huge risk. If you have type 2 diabetes, you didn't always have it. You did it when you gained a certain threshold of weight that pushed you over the edge. And if you're told that you have prediabetes or borderline diabetes, for me, that's diabetes. You don't want to wait until you have full blown prediabetes or borderline diabetes is still diabetes. Diabetes is burning food that's too rich for your system. Your heart doesn't like burning simple sugars. It would rather burn ketones and it would rather burn fat because it's a much better source of energy. So basically, tune into what you're consuming. Consider food as fuel and movement. Maintain your mobility, and if you're losing it, find a way to overcome that. Whether it be Pilates or Tai Chi or yoga, find a way to overcome sitting disease.
I love sitting disease. I hadn't heard that before. That's really good. Well, thank you so much. I've really learned a lot. I don't really know a lot about the heart
Well,
other than
it's just part of my daily life, and I see patients who have had multiple heart attacks and bypasses, and people are losing their legs, and people having strokes. But I also see younger people who are starting to have heart issues that are really surprising to them because maybe they don't smoke. But yeah, it's happening at a younger age, and it is something that I truly believe is mostly preventable.
mm-hmm. All right. Well, I love your advice to your younger self, and thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward. Maybe we'll do this again.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
It's really great. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye now.